Frozen Depths Attack. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mystery Safari. In this episode, we're diving into three horrific once-in-a-lifetime events, things so disturbing you might not believe they happened if they weren't documented, and one of them is pure nightmare fuel. Viewer discretion is advised. At just 28, Kirsty was already an accomplished scientist and oceanographer with a geology degree from the University of London, a master's from Southampton University, and fieldwork experience in Greenland and Australia. But in the summer of 2002, a dream opportunity arrived, a 30-month contract with the British Antarctic Survey to study ice movement and its effects on life in Antarctica. She traveled to the remote Rothera research station on Adelaide Island, surrounded by snow, jagged mountains, and icy sea. Life and work there were unlike anywhere else, and on July 22, 2003, she and her colleague Richard prepared for a routine snorkel survey to check underwater ice monitoring equipment. The day was calm and clear as Kirsty zipped into her bright orange dry suit and entered the near-freezing water at 3:10 p.m. The two separated to work about 50 feet apart. Moments later, Richard heard a muffled underwater scream. He turned just in time to see Kirsty vanish into the black depths as if something yanked her down. He swam toward her, but she was gone. From shore, teammates reported seeing what looked like a violent struggle with a leopard seal before she was dragged under. At 3:25 p.m., a mayday went out, and rescue teams scoured the eerily still water. For 10 long minutes, nothing, until less than a mile away, the surface finally broke. Predator's relentless grip. When one of the teams spotted it, the sight was beyond horrific. A massive leopard seal holding Kirsty's body face down in the water, her head clenched firmly in its jaws. The rescue boat sped toward the scene as one crew member smashed the surface with a shovel, desperate to scare it off. Spooked by the approaching boat, the seal finally released her, but chillingly stayed nearby, circling as rescuers hauled her aboard. Emergency first aid began instantly, but Kirsty was unresponsive. The boat raced to shore, where the base doctor fought for over an hour to bring her back, without success. The sudden violent loss shattered her 21 colleagues, and the next morning, her family back in the UK received the news. Her death was unprecedented, not only the first in British Antarctic Survey history, but the first recorded human fatality caused by a leopard seal. Investigators later found she'd been dragged 230 feet underwater for 6 excruciating minutes, suffering 45 injuries, most to her head and neck from the predator's crushing grip. Leopard seals are no circus attraction. They're apex predators built for speed, power, and bone-crushing force, second only to orcas in Antarctica's food chain. They hunt penguins and smaller seals with brutal precision, grabbing by the feet, thrashing, and smashing prey against the water's surface. An adult can exceed 11 feet and 1,300 pounds, but the one that killed Kirsty was even bigger, an estimated 15-foot female with inch-long canines and a reptilian skull. Though attacks on humans are extremely rare, experts believe she may have resembled a fur seal in her bright snorkel gear. Standard policy, canceling dives if a seal was seen, had worked flawlessly for 30 years, but this one stayed hidden below, striking without warning and vanishing into the depths before circling back. Kirsty had followed every safety rule, yet the attack was a one-in-a-million tragedy. In its wake, Antarctic research programs re-examined safety protocols. Though the grim truth remained, nothing could have changed what happened that day in 2003. Driven by loss. After dropping out of school, Jacob wasn't giving up on life. He had his sights set on becoming a photographer whose name people would remember. In the summer of 2001, while he chased his own ambitions, his sister Grace was working at a children's camp in France when headaches began to plague her. By August, she returned home, and within a month, doctors diagnosed her with a brain tumor. The family thought they'd caught it early enough to save her, but 6 months later, the cancer came back stronger, forcing surgery in Belgium. On December 18, 2002, at just 20 years old, Grace passed away. Before she died, she made a single request, that her ashes be kept until another family member passed, so she wouldn't be alone when her remains were scattered at sea. Losing his sister and best friend became the turning point in Jacob's life. Seeing that she'd done nothing to deserve such a fate didn't make him bitter. It lit a fire under him. From that day forward, he vowed to live fully, doing everything he dreamed of, not just for himself, but for both of them. And unlike most, he kept that promise. His photography would go on to win awards, including National Geographic's Adventure Photographer Award, be displayed on London billboards, grace the pages of surf magazines, and reach audiences as far away as Australia. But photography was just one passion. Jacob trained relentlessly in the water, practiced holding his breath for minutes at a time, climbed mountains and explored caves across the globe, and became so skilled a swimmer that he trained other experts. On YouTube, under the name Whirlpool Hitman, he posted tutorials on navigating natural whirlpools and swimming in dangerous waters, mixed with lighter content like cat videos, memes, and quirky clickbait, one video even passing 40 million views. It was clear he was both a professional and a playful spirit, and one day, that curiosity brought him to Haley Harbor, northeast of Penzance. Once a major industrial port from the 1700s, it housed foundries, including one simply called Foundry, which built Carnsue Pool, a calm artificial harbor inside a natural bay, about 590 by 230 meters, with depths ranging from less than half a meter to about 3 meters depending on the tide. Twice a day, water flowed through a bridge's canal gates and a pair of brick tunnels beneath an earthen dike. But during spring tides, that flow created something dangerous, a whirlpool larger than a person. On May 28, 2013, the strongest tide of the year hit, and Jacob couldn't resist. Stopping by the home of a 70-year-old local friend, David, he asked for filming help and headed to the harbor. After inspecting the whirlpool, he donned a neoprene diving suit for buoyancy and spent 20 minutes acclimating, keeping his distance, learning its strength, and waiting as the tide gradually weakened. While David made his way down, Jacob even filmed in a rubber horse mask. Pure 2013 internet humor, completely unfazed by the swirling force before him. Into the depths. During the session, Jacob also managed to capture rare interior shots of the swirling whirlpool using a GoPro mounted on a pole. When David arrived moments later, Jacob explained its nature and his confidence in handling it. This wasn't some impulsive stunt. Jacob had navigated dozens of whirlpools before and could teach others how to prepare for and survive them. All he needed was someone to hold the camera while he entered, to capture angles impossible alone. Once those were done, the final task was a handheld underwater shot to reveal the vortex's scale against a human figure. Jacob, still cheerful, took the camera and dove in. His neoprene wetsuit, filled with thousands of tiny insulating air bubbles, provided buoyancy, but, like the human body, compressed at depth. A few meters down, he could lose a quarter of that lift. By 10 meters, half would be gone. No one knows exactly what went wrong, but a slight miscalculation, just a few extra meters, could have suddenly overwhelmed him. If the whirlpool dragged him deeper, the reduced buoyancy would make escape harder. Though capable of holding his breath for minutes, the rough, narrow 5-meter pipe he was pulled into could have caused him to strike his head, chest, or jaw, forcing a sudden breath of water. Geological surveys show the pool's maximum flow rate was a staggering 15.5 cubic meters per second, over 15,000 liters, enough to fill an Olympic pool in under 3 minutes. If he became stuck, disoriented, or simply surprised, we'll never know. Jacob didn't surface on time. David searched as a nearby fisherman joined in. Jacob then reappeared, face down and unconscious, as they called 999. A lifeboat crew arrived quickly, and he was airlifted to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead. The coroner confirmed drowning. Grace's ashes had been planned for scattering with their grandmothers on Gwynver Beach, 13 kilometers from Penzance, where the church cross is made of surfboards. The date, May 29th, was the day after Jacob's passing. In the end, they went together. Years earlier, on February 9, 2001, in the control room of the USS Greenville, Captain Scott was hosting a Distinguished Visitor Embarkation, or DVE, a Navy PR program inviting civilians, journalists, and Congress members for a ride on a nuclear submarine, showing off capabilities and securing support. By then, Scott had hosted several such missions. These were relaxed compared to routine training, simple maneuvers designed to impress. On that day, 16 guests joined the crew of 106 as the sub left Pearl Harbor at 7:57 a.m. under perfect skies. After 2.5 hours, they reached a dive site south of Oahu, submerging at 10:17 a.m. to 150 feet. Visitors rotated between control room and lunch, but lunch ran late, Scott engrossed in conversation. Reminded several times after 12:30, he only returned at 1:10 p.m. Sonar technician Patrick monitored for nearby vessels, spotting 3 contacts, all over 13 kilometers away, and cleared maneuvers. At 1:15, Greenville began sharp turns, dives, and ascents, building to its finale, Emergency Deep. The 7,000-ton vessel plunged to 400 feet, then rocketed upward, blowing ballast tanks, breaching the surface like a whale, before turning back toward Pearl Harbor. Frozen Lake Nightmare. It was supposed to be the perfect winter getaway, just 4 friends, a cabin in the woods, and an untouched frozen lake waiting to be explored. Lake Vera was a place few people visited in the dead of winter. Tucked deep in the northern wilderness, it was surrounded by towering pine forests and steep snow-covered hills. The air there was sharper, colder, and quieter than anywhere they had ever been. The lake itself had a strange reputation among the locals. People spoke of it with the kind of casual avoidance that hinted at old stories they didn't want to say out loud. They'd just tell visitors, "Stay close to shore. Ice can be tricky this time of year," and leave it at that. The friends, Sam, Lena, Chris, and Dana, laughed it off. They were city kids, used to warnings they didn't take seriously. On their first morning, the sky was a pale, washed-out gray, and a light snow fell in delicate spirals. They walked out onto the lake, their boots crunching softly against the ice. It stretched endlessly in every direction, a pristine sheet of white and pale blue that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Through thinner patches, they could see straight into the inky black depths below. At first, the lake seemed peaceful, silent except for the faint whistle of the wind. They took photos, tossed snow into the air, and skated awkwardly in their boots, laughing like children. They didn't notice the tiny, almost invisible cracks forming under their feet, thin spider webs in the ice, hidden in the reflection of the cloudy sky. The first sign that something was wrong came as a sound, low and deep, like the hum of a giant stringed instrument somewhere far below them. They stopped, glancing at each other. The noise came again, louder this time, a long, hollow groan that seemed to vibrate through their bones. And then the wind stopped. The air felt heavy, pressing in around them. Without warning, a deafening crack split the silence, sharp and violent, echoing across the lake like a gunshot. The ice beneath them shuddered. Lena, the youngest in the group, let out a startled cry as a jagged black fissure opened at her feet. Before anyone could react, it widened, and she vanished into the freezing darkness below. The others screamed her name, rushing to the hole, their boots sliding dangerously close to the edge. The water was black and restless, flecked with shards of ice. Sam dropped to his knees, plunging his arms into the water, his breath coming in sharp, frantic gasps. The cold was blinding, stealing the air from his lungs. He groped for her, desperate, but felt only the empty pull of the lake. Seconds dragged on like hours. Their shouting echoed back from the distant tree line, empty and unanswered. They all knew the truth. In water that cold, a person had less than a minute before hypothermia took hold, and it had already been longer than that. Then, silence again. No ripples, no movement, just the sound of their own breathing and the brittle groan of the ice beneath them. They were shivering hard now, their fingers going numb. The vast, white emptiness of the lake felt suffocating, like they were standing on the thinnest shell between themselves and something ancient waiting below. And then Chris saw it. Far out on the ice, maybe 30 meters away, a faint disturbance appeared on the surface. Small at first, just a subtle ripple moving against the stillness. But as they watched, it began to grow, the water swelling upward in a slow, deliberate push. It was heading toward them, too far away to see clearly, too steady to be just wind or current. Sam whispered Lena's name under his breath, his voice trembling, not from the cold, but from the growing certainty that whatever was moving toward them wasn't her. The ripple came closer. The friends backed away slowly, boots scraping over the ice, their breath ragged in the cold air. Dana's eyes darted toward the shore. It felt impossibly far away now, like a dream they couldn't reach. The ripple stopped, then vanished. For a long moment, nothing happened. No sound, no movement, just the vast, oppressive silence of the frozen lake. And then, from directly beneath them, came a slow, resonant knock. 1, 2, 3. The sound was impossibly loud, echoing through the ice and up into their bones. It was deliberate. It was aware. They bolted for the shore, their movements clumsy and panicked, the ice groaning under their weight. Sam didn't dare look back, but Chris did. Far behind them, where they had been standing seconds before, the ice was buckling upward from below, as if something massive was pressing against it. It followed them, slow but steady, closing the distance. By the time they reached solid ground, they could barely breathe. Their legs ached, their hands were stiff, and their chests felt like they were being crushed by the cold. They collapsed in the snow, gasping, staring out at the lake. At first there was nothing, and then in the distance, a dark shape broke the surface, just for a moment, too far away to see clearly, but close enough to know it was huge. The shape sank beneath the ice again. The lake went still. The friends never went back on the ice. In fact, they left the cabin that same night, driving until sunrise without stopping. No one else was on Lake Vera for the rest of that winter. And when spring came, the ice melted, revealing nothing at all. But every winter since, the locals say they hear the same deep knocking sound coming from beneath the frozen lake.